will be providing you as an overview of what steps we've taken since our last since the work study in May. As a reminder, in May, I reviewed some of the slides that are in the presentation, so we'll go through some of those again. And this is to let you know what we've done since the May meeting. So you've seen this before. This is our process plan, and the point that we're at right now is I've grayed in these boxes up to this point, and we have been working on the scope of our affiliation, and I drafted high-level deal points. Yes, question?
Yes, I'd like to
yes.
show that Commissioner Spikers is here. Thank you, John.
Of course. So in our May meeting, you'll see the slide in a minute, we worked on high-level deal points, and then we're getting close to a recommendation regarding which organization we should pursue for a letter of intent. So that's where we are in the process. Just a reminder, we talked, and there's nothing new here, but just a reminder, our evaluation criteria was about brand. We thought there should be a good geography, connection with an affiliate. We wanted an affiliate that has financial strength and willingness to make commitments to stability and growth for the hospital and the clinics. We wanted, that's kind of the same thing, the investments for that. We wanted them to be committed to community wellness and population health management. We wanted a good alignment with our mission and vision as well as our strategies. And then you've seen this again. This is the three finalists and what their the assessment was from staff on how they rated. Nothing new on that. We talked about that. And then, excuse me, that's in there twice, shouldn't be. But here in the process plan, we talked last time about the initial steps, and that was accomplishing these things as really our next step. We had this request for all of this information, which we have provided to all three parties. And then we wanted to provide an opportunity to review those financial statements with Steve and myself. That has been done. And then we wanted to start talking with them about the high-level deal points. And what are those high-level deal points? They're right here. And this is what we talked about last time, that these deal points would be the first foray into trying to put together a letter of intent with these items included. And this is what you at the May meeting said, yeah, that really sums up what we're trying to achieve. A rebranding. We wanted the partner to lease and operate the hospital. We were looking for the real assets and debt to remain with the district, and that the lease would have in it a purchase option, so that at some point, if the affiliate partner and the district want to move the real assets and debt to the affiliate partner, that can happen. The district needs to continue and fulfill its mission. And I put in caveat here, not caveat, but just a note, that mission being to improve the health and well-being of the people of this community. So what does that look like? Well, as you recall, with our conversation with the folks from Astria, that was not part of the deal that they were comfortable with. But we really want to see the district continue. It's very much like the Verdant Model, where the district still has a role in health promotion, disease prevention, health education, and working with other health and human services agencies in the area, things like matching grants, that kind of thing. We said there should be some performance measures. So the relationship should be undergirded by us achieving things such as customer satisfaction, net income. It should be a financially viable relationship for both parties. And we need to make sure that the district maintains compliance with all of its bond covenants. And then lastly, we wanted to make sure that in our agreement that there was a commitment from our affiliate partner to maintain scope of services that is commensurate with what we see in community health needs assessments, so that there's a good match between what the hospital and clinics are providing and what the community needs. So that, again, there's a quite a bit of repeat there, but I wanted just to remind you of that. Now, next slide, and this is in your packet, and I'm going to fill this out on screen with you. You'll get all this information in a minute, but I want to take it organization by organization. And the first one I want to talk about is UW Medicine. UW Medicine proposed a very interesting model, and that is that RCCH, which is a for-profit hospital management company, has formed and UW Medicine have formed an LLC. That LLC is designed to provide UW Medicine with a way of bringing in many more hospitals into the UW family, kind of in a second tier. So right now UW has, of course, the University Hospital, Harborview, Northwest Hospital, and Valley Medical Center, and they all bear UW name, and they're really fully integrated with the UW system. But they recognize that there are many other hospitals in the state that want to affiliate with UW Medicine, but they don't want to make the full commitment to all the capital needs for those hospitals, and so they've partnered with RCCH. Under that partnership, RCCH, this for-profit hospital corporation, manages these affiliate hospitals that they're bringing in, and UW offers their brand and all of their clinical best practices and quality to the hospitals that come in. Again, under this kind of second tier, but it is under a for-profit limited liability corporation. So the hospitals that come into that would be really day-to-day managed by RCCH with help from UW Medicine on clinical best practices. The brand that they would bring to us would be this brand, and they've already done this with Capital Medical Center, by the way. And so it's still Capital Medical Center, and we would still have been Snoqualmie Valley Hospital with this brand, a UW Medicine community partner. So we wouldn't be UW Snoqualmie, we would still be Snoqualmie Valley Hospital with this sub-brand. Now, I have a little X here, and you'll see that X come up in other places here. They have declined to affiliate with us. And here's the reason why. They recognize that this would be a lease agreement, and enough of a lease payment to the district to make sure that the district maintains its debt service coverage ratio. It's one of those parts of being compliant with our revenue bond covenants. And then the other is they recognize that there's a need for capital investment in order to build out surgical services here. They believe that that's an important part of the equation. They weren't willing to do both. And so I told you about the model, and I hope you're not upset that I told you all about the model just to get to the point that they're not. But I thought it was a very interesting model to hear about, and it's good for you to know about what's happening in the community with respect to UW's approach to affiliation. But they've declined based on not wanting to make the simultaneous commitments of lease and the investment. Now, what's interesting is that RCCH just 2 days ago became a health. Excuse me. Now the words. Just Steve. It's not health. It's not Health Point, but I'll think of it. Yeah. But here's what happened. RCCH is actually owned by Apollo Global Management Services. They're a large company, investment company, that buys up and sells all kinds of different companies all over the world. They own RCCH. They just bought another for-profit hospital corporation, and they're integrating RCCH with this other system. They'll have 84 hospitals across 30 states. My feeling is that RCCH probably doesn't want to step into any new deals right now, given that they're being subsumed into this other corporation. LifePoint Health. Thank you, Steve. LifePoint Health. So
would they be interested, let's just say nothing works with the other two, would they be interested in taking over a lease? We might have enough capital to cover the
build out
for surgical services here.
Great question. I will, I can pose that to them and see if that changes their thinking.
So instead of UW, if I'm understanding your question, David, instead of UW, RCCH will be the way to go?
Well, no, I'm just saying, would they still be interested in taking over operations and leasing the hospital if we were with the capital to expand our services?
Right, I understand. I mean, you say they, is that
They,
RCCH or UW?
they would be,
It's the LLC.
yeah, that LLC is made up of
But there are
both.
just too many layers there. They're under a big corporation, then this, and then that.
So-
I'm just curious as to how much UW is paying this management company.
There's no payment for them.
Oh.
They're together.
okay.
So they have both UW and RCCH management makes up the board
Makes up
of this LLC. So.
Where are they located and how many under?
So
RCCH?
RCCH is out of Brentwood, Tennessee.
Oh, another one of those Tennessee
Yeah.
operations.
It is. But Commissioner Spiker said, as a Plan B, if some of the others don't turn out, we could possibly take one of the things off the table that concerns them.
Well, it would be very easy if they could guarantee any of the losses in the first few years it started, because
It's gonna
Be
take a
pretty-
while, yeah.
I mean, if we put $5 million cash and leverage the east side, and they were guaranteeing us to pay that east side loan, the east campus leverage off, you'd have to $10 million to create surgical services.
Not sure East
Are you
Campus
looking
is
for
worth that
feedback
much,
on
but
each of these, or do you want to go through all of them?
we'll go through all of them, and then we can talk about how we feel about the three together. So let me now talk about Virginia Mason. I put a little check marks here. What the check mark means, the check mark is they're not concerned about that. It's not necessarily a commitment that they've made, because we don't have any deals, of course, until we have an LOI in place. But just wanted to let you know where Steve and I heard comfort coming from them. For rebranding, definitely. They would rebrand us as Virginia Mason, ... could be Virginia Mason,
So
Snoqualmie.
check means they're definitely gonna do.
Yes. And they said it a number of times, if we're going to rebrand, we want to protect that brand. So the idea of a lease operating, they actually didn't want to do it through a lease. They wanted to do it through a management services agreement. That's what they're talking about now, is a management services agreement. So rather than paying the district a lease payment, they would have the district paying them to manage the hospital and the clinics. What that would mean is that a certain number of management staff would become Virginia Mason employees, and then the district would be paying Virginia Mason in order to do the management.
Basically, they're not going,
It
it sounds like they
it's-
don't want to cover the lease
Yeah.
amount. They don't want to.
correct.
guarantee
It would not be a lease agreement.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so it's,
yeah.
you pay them whether they do well or not.
Well or not.
That is-
right.
it's-
They're just-
Well, that's,
It's a flat fee. Okay, I'll just keep,
That's not
so,
gonna work.
of course, the assets remain with the district.
The money.
Purchase option does not apply because it doesn't even start with the lease. They're okay with the district still operating to fulfill its mission, the performance standards. Service and scope expansion, I put to be determined only because there not being a commitment on a lease payment. I don't know that there would also be any commitment to the capital investment necessary to expand our services. And then this question about allocation of unrestricted cash and our excess tax revenue, it really doesn't apply. That doesn't come into the equation because this is a fee-for-service arrangement that they're proposing. Okay, so that's the profile in Virginia Mason. Overlake is really leaning in. I'll just, and Steve, you can jump in too, because Steve's been in all of these meetings. They've expressed a lot of excitement about this opportunity. It would be a lease. We would have, I mentioned here the economies of scale. I believe that a fully integrated organization of the two hospitals under a lease agreement gets us those economies of scale. I don't think we'd be able to achieve that without it. Of course, assets remain with the district. They are okay with having a purchase option at the right time. The right time is likely 7 years from now when there is an opportunity under the revenue bonds to refinance the revenue bonds. They could be defeased at that point, and then you would have assets and debt moving. So having an option to do that, they're okay with that. Of course, it's 2025 according to the revenue bond. Very committed to this district continuing and fulfilling a mission in the community. In fact, I had a follow-up conversation with Mike Marsh on that, and very committed to that. Performance measures, fine with that. Service scope expansion, very fine with that. They're
What do you mean they're very fine with it to fulfill the mission? I mean, what are the specifics? Did you mention like exactly what he means by that?
What it means is that the deal would provide enough funds for the district to continue to operate and do those things that I just had been mentioning around community health education, disease prevention. There's a desire to make sure the district has enough to operate and actually do those things and not just be a check processing organization.
Is that because the lease
More
payment
than lip service.
would be sufficient
Yeah.
to achieve that?
The lease,
Where's that money going to come from?
So they're great. That's a great question. I'm going to talk about that. Commissioner Pollard asked a great question. Where's the money come from?
Where does
the money come from? So let me, because that takes us down right here into this point right here.
Yeah.
That what we need to do is we need to work on this allocation of unrestricted cash. That's back to your point, Commissioner Spector. Do we invest some in the expansion of scope of services and our excess tax revenue? So you may recall that our tax revenue to service the LTGO bonds is more than is necessary to service the LTGO bonds, and it's about $600,000 a year. But of course, it supports day-to-day operations. So back to Commissioner Pollard's question, really, that's not money that's just sitting there. That's money that we use to operate the hospital. So where would the money come from in order to help the district to be able to have enough to accomplish its mission? So Steve and I have been working, and it's more Steve, less Tom, because Steve actually did all the numbers on this. We did some analysis, and we've shown each of these parties this analysis where we assumed that brand would create some growth for us initially, even without having the expansion of services. We made what I believe a very conservative estimate that brand would help us grow our emergency department volume, and there would be other related service revenue as the ED grows, but we assumed only medical imaging. Lab would grow with that as well, but we didn't assume that. We wanted to be conservative. Yes, Daryl?
How do you determine what gives you the tool to determine the brand is going to make it different? I mean, is it just we assume, or where are you getting data from?
It was from the Verdant. It was from what happened at Verdant, and the reports that I have received from different sources and that's from two people who worked on that project, was that actually the week after Swedish took over that hospital, their volumes increased significantly.
Swedish took over which hospital?
Edmonds.
Edmonds.
Correct.
Okay.
And as soon as that was, it was Stevens Hospital.
Yes.
Right? And as soon as it was rebranded, its volumes just took off.
Okay.
And people talk about the irony of it is that nothing really changed inside, but the confidence that the community had with that Swedish moniker
So is that
changed.
known now as a Swedish hospital?
It is absolutely, and but it's leased. It's a leased facility, and I think that's been going now. Maybe has it been 10 years now? Maybe not quite 10.
been quite a
So it's
while.
been eight to 10 years. And Swedish has made significant investments in that. They needed a whole new emergency department. Fortunately, our investment is really around bringing surgical services here. The rest of the facility is in great shape, of course.
Do we maintain our name, or does it have to be changed?
We
if and when?
absolutely would have a name change. That would be part of, and I'm going to get to these numbers in just a minute. So the name change, whether it's Virginia Mason or Overlake, it would be Overlake Snoqualmie Valley Hospital, perhaps. Nothing's
just
been.
Just like Valley General, UW Medicine or something.
Yeah, but theirs is kind of reversed. I would recommend that we lead with this brand. Overlake Snoqualmie Valley Hospital, something to that effect.
Snoqualmie Valley Hospital Overlake.
Yeah. We went through that at Legacy Health System in the Portland area, and we decided to rebrand so Mount Hood Medical Center, where I was the administrator, we rebranded as Legacy Mount Hood Medical Center, and it really helped people understand we were part of a 5-hospital system.
What's nice there about it, that Overlake did even showed interest after the first failure of the, I don't mean failure.
I think you're.
I think that's what's
yes.
nice to hear about.
And what I heard from them is, thank you for that. What they have said is, let's let the past be the past. Let's start fresh. And at the same time, they said, let's not forget the things that we have and continue to do together, like Eastside Health Network. One of their cardiologists is our cardiologist, and our echocardiography service is done by Overlake. Eastside Health Network is our clinically integrated network.
And it would be, if this is successful, we would be their first affiliate party, because they never had one.
That's correct.
So
That's
that's
correct.
really a big
So
thing for me anyway.
I haven't lost your question.
It's a plus,
And that is,
yeah.
the question still from Commissioner Pollard is, where's the money coming from? So what we're working on.
For what?
So if you take a look at us right now, and moving to become, we're all Overlake now. Now, if the district continues, the district has to have some funds to operate. Where do those funds come from? If all that excess tax revenue that we currently have, that $600,000, if we're using that to support operations, how does the district have money to operate? And it will have to come from the growth. So both parties have to have some trust in the fact that the growth is going to create enough income here to be able to leave money behind with the district.
Isn't that why we're doing this?
Yes. Yes, great point. And so Steve has done some initial projections on that, and I'm going to go back to what it was. It was, we currently have 30% of the market in emergency services. What if that grew to 40%? And that's not a lot. But what happens if we go to 40%? Now keep in mind, Ide Bailey had projected that we'd be at 50%. We're not there yet. But if we just get halfway to that Ide Bailey projection, what does that mean in net revenue to the hospital? And it's over $3 million.
It's pretty significant.
Yeah, over $3 million. So if we're trying to find enough money for the district to operate, we believe that the pro forma, the projection of the impacted brand, is more than going to make up for what the deal has to allocate for the district to continue its mission.
So of that $3 million increased revenue, what's the cost
That's
involved
net.
in that? What's the net?
That is the net.
That is the net, and I'm going to put some caveats. This was what I call a tabletop exercise, which is, let's look at it and just see, we didn't dive into the detail.
But we did.
But we want to see, okay.
We did factor in staff increases
We
for that.
factored in staffing increases, and what does it look like? Is it a number that you'd say, okay, this sounds really attractive, or, you just go, this isn't gonna work. It was the number that sounds very attractive. So I said, let's continue, it indicated, let's continue with that. The affiliate partner said, well, yeah, we
Yeah.
see what you did, and that makes sense. There's a lot more analysis that has to go on, but it's still,
But Steve, yeah,
it's a valid assumption that the capture of market share will be a very good economic driver to this deal.
and it's a conservative estimate.
You know, I'm not arguing with your figures, but it does sound a little unbelievable that a net 3 million on
Well,
an
David,
increase
again,
of 10%.
just forget the 3 million. Does it look like it'll work or not?
Yeah,
It
so,
looks like it'll work.
so what
I'm not
that,
gonna hang my hat on that number.
So you're not committing to.
No,
No, I'm
but
just
what-
saying,
It's
it's a very
possible.
attractive number,
But it
even if
told-
you missed it by half.
yeah, that's
It's
what
1.5.
we're trying to understand is, if
So-
we're trying to get $300,000, and that's kind of, if we're trying to make up for, that would be kind of the budget that the district would need to have, somewhere between $300,000 and $500,000. Would a modest change accomplish that? It was so much that we said, we're not concerned about the ability of this deal to be able to produce revenue so that there is adequate funds left for the district to operate.
So, David, let's say that number came out to $500,000. Okay,
Now we're concerned.
that's within the margin of error.
Yeah,
So it's not nearly as attractive. This number is a big enough number to say, okay, there's some in there, everybody agrees. And it's worth pursuing if I was gonna look at that. Not, I'm gonna hang my hat on it.
Yeah.
It's worth
But at
going
least
forward.
continue
Yeah.
talking and see
it,
where we go
it
next.
fits with
Yeah.
an order of magnitude that gives us comfort that the deal could work.
Well, here's, so if revenues increase, and they're doing don't they want those if they're producing the revenues because of their name?
It would, so the hospital and the clinics would be operating as Overlake, under Overlake, and then the net income, it becomes Overlake net income. But if the district is going to be able to operate, it needs to be able to keep a good portion of that excess tax revenue and not have that also be going to support hospital operations. So back to the core question that Gene was asking, and that is, if the hospital and clinics move over without that $600,000, wouldn't Overlake kind of say, well, wait a minute, you need to give us the $600,000 because you're currently using that to support operations. And what we're saying is, with the Overlake name, we can leave a good portion of that behind.
See, all of these figures are kind of, you guys have been working with this stuff, okay?
Yeah,
So
I know.
first you're saying $300,000 to $400,000, $300,000 to $500,000. Now you're saving $600,000.
the total.
What is the deal? Are we
Okay,
down below $600,000? Can you explain that?
Sure,
a
I
little
can.
better? Because
The total gap between tax revenue exceeds LTGO debt service by $600,000. Currently, all of that is being used to support hospital operations. That's revenue that is on the books. How much of that does the district need going forward? And Steve and I worked on a preliminary budget for the district to be able to have funds to grant to other organizations, have an executive director, do health education in the community, and that would be somewhere between $300,000 and $500,000, of course, for you to approve that budget. So $300,000 to $500,000 would be the budget for the district. So that's what would need to be left behind. So then Overlake would say to themselves, well, wait a minute, how are we going to support operations if we're leaving that money behind? And that's why we did the exercise on volume growth.
Does Overlake know about this little tabletop?
They absolutely do. They've seen the analysis, and they've heard me explain exactly this.
Who did you meet
Well, is
with
there
at Overlake?
We've met with Mike Marsh, who is their CEO, and Andrew Tokar, who is their CFO. In fact, Andrew and Steve meet tomorrow to go more deeply into these numbers. Make sure that
Mostly it's the audited financials, but,
yeah,
just
yeah.
the free flow of information.
I would be nervous if they didn't do that. or if we
Oh,
do
yeah,
that.
Yeah.
This
No,
needs to happen.
There's gonna be way more.
Oh, there's a lot of
conversation
homework to
being-
be done.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to
Analysis, yeah.
provide you is on a high level, where these different organizations are coming in terms of their idea about what the structure would look like. And really what we're down to here is Overlake and Virginia Mason. And which of those two structures looks like it most readily fits with what we're trying to achieve. And of course, Mike and I both said to each other, the devil is in the details, and we need to bring our boards along. That reminds me, they have not brought their board into the conversation. This is happening next, did I say that already? This is happening next week. Mike meets with his board chair next week. And so I would like to let Mike have the opportunity to
Do that first.
do that first before we talk widely about this. Yeah.
Well, you know, rebranding was one of our priorities.
Yes.
To me, it was immense, the rebranding concept. So something like, and I realize this is not realistic now because they rejected this, but something like a UW Medicine community partner won't cut it. And very frankly, Snoqualmie Valley Hospital Overlake won't cut it. This has to be Overlake Hospital.
That's my feeling as well.
And
I-
one thing I'd like to
I
see
agree.
is while we do these explorations, we don't do a premature LOI, because if for whatever reason, something comes up for them or whatever reason, the Overlake thing sours, I would like to see us look at Virginia Mason further, and I don't want us to get into an LOI.
Yeah.
And related to that is, does Overlake know that Virginia Mason is involved in discussions?
They do. Each party knew that there were three organizations and they knew who they were.
Okay.
I must say, I thank you both for doing that due diligence without having to
Yeah.
hire a consultant that cost us, and, doing that, the relationship with another entity.
And-
And
That
I
saved us money,
okay.
I also think that this is starting out a whole lot better than what we did before. The discussion around financials is right out front. Everybody's
Yeah.
talking about it. Nobody's trying to keep secrets or anything like
Right.
that. It's right out on the table. And I feel a lot more comfortable with that than what we went through prior.
Yeah, it was more of a
Rush,
fire
rush.
sale.
Yeah. But
Probably
this
last
time,
time,
but
there was
this
not
time-
much we had to offer.
I think this brings Overlake tremendous advantages, because what they do is they skip over Swedish and capture this market. That must be of immense value to
I
them.
think it is too. I think we have a lot to offer.
Well,
I agree with that.
I think in conjunction with that, Commissioner Pollard, is that many of us who've been here for a long time, were already attached to Overlake. So to continue and be able to do both, something here and in Bellevue, it's a pretty easy drive too. If you didn't do Swedish before, you don't have to
Well,
worry about it.
and remember that when the community voted 69% against building a new hospital, the justification was we can be at Overlake in 25 minutes.
That's right.
And Swedish wasn't even on the drawing boards then.
However, it takes longer to get to
It does
Overlake.
take longer now.
It does.
But an ambulance can get there in 25 minutes.
And I think we have the similar characteristics in terms of, Overlake was a smaller community then, so our community somewhat, have that same similar character and,
We have- we
and
have-
so,
We have a very different
yeah.
community today.
but it's very
Yeah.
different, but I'm saying, environmentally wide and all that stuff, I think, you'll see a lot of, big things happening.
But
And I'm
also,
sure Overlake is very aware of that.
also our community has needs with all the children, with all the young families that Overlake can provide that we cannot provide. You've got kids doing sports. David repeatedly talks about broken legs, broken arms, and I think he's absolutely right. We have moms having new babies. Where
Yep.
are they going to go?
Right.
If we can supply clinics to help them with new babies, with then we're becoming
It's-
more of a unit.
I agree. I totally agree.
But it's unlikely that Overlake would establish an obstetrics department.
I wouldn't rule that out. I really wouldn't.
I don't think we have to go there.
I wouldn't rule that out.
Yeah, and even if you deliver in Bellevue, that's pretty
Yeah.
close.
Well, one of the things, I do have a question, again, I'm getting back to the emergency increasing in 10% of the market. How would they staff to be able to do that? Because if they have the same level of care level that we have now, even if with a brand name, I'm not sure we're going to get the same, the increased cases that we would normally get.
That's obviously up to them, how they staff it. When I did my assumptions, I increased staffing based on the staffing benchmarking we have for the emergency department. I mean, that's the best thing I had at the time. So I increased staff to cover the added visits. So we wanted to put something in there. I didn't want to say with the capacity of existing staff.
Yeah, we did add staff
Yeah,
too.
we did add a little staff dollars.
We talked a lot about leases. What kind of, what length of lease are we talking about when we talk to these folks?
We haven't got there yet, Commissioner Pollard.
But I mean, what is in your mind?
Long
as a
term.
strategy.
A lease that would be at least as long as that first point in time where we could defease the loan. So it's at least an initial 7-year term would be what I would propose, with easy to renew terms. We want a deal, and I am talking about Overlake, but we both want to establish a very long-term relationship. We don't want this to be something that either party could walk away with at a drop of a hat. Some of you have the memory, I have the stories, but I can imagine what it was like when the management services company that was running the hospital came to the district one day and said, "We're done. We do not want that. We want a partner who is totally invested in this and really long term. And really, when you think about the model that works to that end, it is that Swedish Edmunds model. I mean, that is a Swedish hospital. Yes, it's under a lease, but that is a Swedish hospital. There's a long-term commitment there. And Swedish has dumped millions and millions of dollars into that hospital to get it up to the next level. That's the vision that we should have for the length of the relationship, a permanent one.
I think if it's totally rebranded Overlake,
Yes,
there's a big commitment there to not
absolutely.
leave at the drop of a hat.
Agreed. That's what we want.
Okay.
Yes, Joan.
Well, I just say, are we completely ruling out Virginia Mason?
What I would
They ruined themselves.
so what I would recommend is we don't burn bridges.
Yes.
Okay, these are folks who have come forward with great conversation with us. They have a lot of respect for us. Even UW was wonderful through the whole process, and so we don't want to burn that bridge. But I do think that at some point we have to focus our energies on that organization that is most likely to accomplish our goals. So for our board meeting, our regular board meeting, I'll come with a recommendation. I can't do that today, but I'll come with a recommendation that we focus our efforts right now on Overlake, that we tell other parties, actually it'd be Virginia Mason, thank you so much. We think you're an awesome organization. We would love to engage in a conversation with you again if we find out that we are not able to move forward. Conversely, or at the same place, we talk to UW with the idea that Commissioner Spikers has, and that is we could come back to the table under some different terms, different circumstances. We don't burn bridges.
Going back into money, and where's the money going to come from? There are many avenues that we can take on. For example, there are corporations out there that are shelling out, they're shelling out big grant money
Right.
for hospital operations, capital management. There are many ways to skin a cat.
Yes,
So
there
we
are.
don't just
And-
stay on, where's the
and
money
that's one of the
gonna
things
come
that
from?
Verdant-
We have to be, we have to get out of our comfort zone
Right.
and look at those monies
So-
out there.
So that district that then became Verdant when they got out of the hospital business,
Yeah, I'm sure they,
they get grant money.
yeah.
So they get grant money, they have their lease payment from Swedish, and they have tax money. They're doing very well. But they're optimally positioned to get grant money because they don't have patient service revenue. They really depend on those kinds of sources, and they do very well in that.
Yeah.
It's a great point.
So, we have to go outside of the box and think of great ways to look for that money where we're gonna be,
Right. So thinking in the future about the district continuing to operate, you definitely would want to have someone on staff who can keep that engine rolling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Under Virginia Mason, you say prefers management services agreement. How strong is that preferred?
It's very strong.
And the reason I ask is, if we unhook from Virginia Mason, we should put it on the basis of we prefer a lease arrangement.
I agree with
So
that.
it doesn't reflect on them, and they might change their mind. You never know.
You never know. That's a great point. Yeah.
Oh, can I just add, I worked at Virginia Mason for 100 years, at least it feels like it. Anyway, back in the early 90s or late 80s, they had mushroomed out to all kinds of places, out on the coast and all over, and it didn't work. So they cocooned in and said, we're going to make what we have work.
And they really did focus internally on the Toyota model.
Yeah.
And they
went
still,
to Japan and
in fact, when Steve and I were there, I think half their management, that's probably, but there was a sizable number of people who were in Japan because that lean management model is something that they've embraced and they continue to work on it. And that's been a great internal focus on.
Piggybacking
Quality.
on that, I think we're fortunate we live in an area where medicine and healthcare, there's a lot of things available, a lot of good entities around us. And I think most of us in healthcare, in hospital districts, we appreciate each other's abilities, we appreciate what each other offers, and we're cordial and we're all doing the same thing. And we all are on the same team in many ways. So I think it doesn't matter which one, as long as we find a way to work together, and that's beneficial to both of us.
And there's a structure that helps us accomplish the goals.
Yeah.
That's what we're really talking about now.
And even if it isn't VM, it doesn't mean VM's not a good hospital. It means
I'm just
VM's
saying,
great. It's just
I
that,
just wanted to gather whether we're just gonna focus on Overlake.
I think right now, that's kind of the.
That's
Because
what I'm
Overlake
recommending.
has taken over Kaiser.
No, Kaiser rents their building. They do
Yeah.
not take over Kaiser. Kaiser
They
bought
have
out,
Was bought out by someone else, yeah.
Kaiser bought
Yeah.
out Group Health, and they just use part of the building. They are not an entity together.
Yeah, they have an agreement for tertiary, they have an agreement for hospital acute care services. And they're, of course, co-located on that east side campus, which really makes that possible. Yeah.
Any other questions for Commissioner, for our CEO, Chief Executive Officer?
I'd just like to know the steps. Now, Steve will be meeting with Overlake financial people. Is it tomorrow or?
Yeah.
Their CFO.
There will be more meetings and more meetings and more meetings as we
Yeah.
get into this.
Yeah. So they've indicated a desire to have Steve and me repeat the presentation that we provided to their CEO and CFO to the other members of their executive team to bring them.
Would be to invite them to come also.
And then are you also going to make a presentation to their board, or will they make the presentation?
Have not yet determined that. Mike Marsh will be talking to his board chair next week, and then we'll be talking about how we bring board members together.
At what point does this process become public? That is, if we say we're going to focus on Overlake,
It-
does that become public?
It's public right
it's
now.
public right now.
That's public now,
public.
yes.
I'm talking about newspapers
Yeah.
and generally available to the public.
Yeah, that's a great question. When would we do a press release on that? And I would say when we sign something like a non-disclosure agreement or confidentiality agreement, which would
LOI.
that we would do the non-disclosure agreement ahead of the LOI.
Okay.
Yeah, and that would, each party would feel more comfortable. Now, that said, all parties were very well versed, because we covered this, that,
We're a public institution.
we're a public institution, everything we talk about in a board meeting is public, that any of the documents that go back and forth are going to be subject to public records request. At the point in time that a decision is made based on those documents, there's actually a period of time called the deliberative process, where those documents can be held until a decision is made. But once a decision by this body is made on all of that work, then all of that work is subject to a public records request. And so we've gone over that precisely as such with each of the parties, and they know that. That said, they're all still interested in having a confidentiality agreement in place that would cover us and them during that deliberative period, so that they would have a sense that at least we're able to have those discussions that are not board meeting discussions prior to a deal.
And that would follow the decision by their board to move ahead.
Say that again, please.
We would get into the deliberative process and confidentiality and all of that. That would follow a decision by the Overlake board to move forward with this project.
We're actually in a deliberative process right now.
If we're in a deliberative process, what can we tell people that ask us what's going on? Is it already confidential?
Anything that we've talked about here in this meeting, you can talk to people about. I would just ask that you don't broadcast it a lot until we give Overlake a chance to talk to the board chair.
Yeah, and certainly we would not put out any news release
No,
or anything
no.
until after we have a decision.
Exactly, and when we sign a non-disclosure agreement saying that we're going to keep this information confidential through the process, that would be a point in time where we would put a press release out. It would be brief, but say, the organizations have entered into a non-disclosure agreement pursuant to an affiliation.
At what point would you notify Virginia Mason that we're at that point?
I'll be talking to Virginia Mason as soon as we have our board meeting, and I'll be bringing a recommendation to the board that we move forward with Overlake, and at that point in time, I'll talk to Virginia Mason and say, we still value you, we still would like to work with you, but we do have to focus our energy on one of the
Well,
affiliate
not only
partners.
that, but we prefer the lease.
That's exactly the
I think
message.
That's very important.
And it's exactly what I had planned to tell them. Yeah.
This is just a work study session, so it still has to come back to us, back to Tom again, and then from Tom to Overlake.
Yeah. So again, it'll come as a recommendation from me that we'll talk about at our next board meeting. But I was, I think Commissioner Pollard a number of years ago pointed to the advantage of a work study session in advance of items coming to the board, and I find this very helpful to be able to talk about items, and then when we get to our regular meeting in August, you've had a chance to already, we've had this conversation, and it really helps you to be able to do the business on recommendations a lot faster.
It's also not so formal. We're all able to just have a discussion, and I think that's really helpful.
I regard it as educational.
Yeah.
It is. I agree.
Any
Any
other
other
questions for our CEO?
Well, looking at, I just don't want to mix any of the other potential partners and under a management services agreement, there might be a way to be able to pay them, but it would be on some kind of an incentive program for them. X amount of
If they hit
dollars for us to
certain
get
measures.
X amount of money. So, to me, that there's still I was looking, I was thinking about that.
Yeah,
Because first you're telling us, right,
Right.
about this.
Right. Yep.
So before anyone just goes away, I think, and says, well, Overlake is the only potential person or entity here, I think, would they be able to do an agreement based on like a commission type or an incentive type
Don't know
basis?
the answer to that.
So,
My ex,
because to me, get somebody managing somebody else's company, they're not even gonna treat it like their own, and it's not even like,
right.
you might as well just.
You know, Steve said, what's the skin in the game? And that's what we were concerned about.
So that's, would they be interested in potentially doing something like that? So if they are interested in performance-based pay for management, then maybe there is something to be said.
But if they don't, yeah, because my experience in many companies that has several different companies out there, the management portion suffers because they just have, and the control is lost within that stream of groups. Whereas when I Overlake not having partners at all, or what, I think would have better, focus on what it is our future holds for. So the same with UW. There's another layer of management company. That's too much. It's overwhelming to me. For me, as if I were to run a business, I'm not going to go that route. They gobble up so many companies, and many of them suffers. They go bankrupt or what? I mean, they have all this money at the beginning, and towards and nothing happens. So that's just my experience that I've seen, in the past. So anyway, that's my opinion, my comment.
Oh, it sounds like they don't even want to investigate whether they could obtain monies from operations to meet our debt. They don't even want to.
Yeah, they
look
don't
at
have
it.
to, because they
Oh,
probably
yeah,
have some
well,
issues themselves.
So, have they looked at it? And if so, do they think they could do a performance-based pay?
Something to ask them.
So, I'd like to.
I'll take that back.
Trying to look at it from Virginia Mason's standpoint, they have no inpatient services on the east side, whereas Overlake does.
Excuse me?
Inpatient, they don't have a hospital as such. I go to the medical center for my care, but it's not a place where I can go and spend the night and go into an inpatient bed. Overlake does. Virginia Mason does not have emergency services. Overlake does. So
On the east side.
Go closer to home.
Here's my question, and this is stimulated by what David is saying. Is there a possibility of a hybrid between management services and leasing? Is there something creative that could be done in a hybrid fashion that would meet those needs that I think Virginia Mason sorely has?
Something to ask them. Well, we'll definitely be having more conversations with them between now and the board meeting.
So those are things I think, when you're talking about potentially putting together a deal, you gotta be creative to make it a win-win. And
Yeah, you do.
so put on your thinking caps and see if, if there's other ways to be. I really don't want to throw two out then getting to having to negotiate a deal with only one during the time. I want them to understand that we are viable. We're an entity that will survive with or without them, and they need to come up with a certain amount of things that we require.
Right.
So I don't want what happened last time with Overlake and Mike Marsh and his team. Because wait a minute, I'm not done. Because if that happens again, I'm going to be very negative towards this whole affiliation with Overlake. The way they came into that meeting when I was there, I think the public would love to have seen what
Yeah,
happened.
were you there?
So, yes, I was there when we had the dinner with them. We were not even allowed to ask one question during this dinner. They had 5 people there. They were all prepared to just dive in, take the entire property, all of our cash, all of our property, everything, right there and then, and pay us nothing.
That's right.
And like I said, what I'm hearing from them is, let's let the past be the past.
Yeah.
So I really have to go in fresh because I wasn't there, so
David's got a good point, though. Our bargaining power is much stronger if they realize we have another option.
we have other options, right?
So,
But at the same token, I don't want to go to futile exercise another 3 years down the road. And so we need to have, I know we're doing our due diligence, which we've done from the
Yeah, there's,
time that we have started, so we've learned from that. So I'd like to know when, the time frame for all this to come into fruition. I don't want any futile, I mean, the longer it takes, the more wasted time and money we're doing. So I'm not saying we don't do we are doing our due diligence right now. And I thank you both for making that effort and not, not having to hire
And
a atrocious
I'll
amount
tell
of
you,
consultants.
regardless of who it is, there's still a lot more to be done.
Right, I agree.
And in order to eventually to put a deal together, we will be seeking some specialized legal counsel on this, but Steve and I are trying to do
Yes.
as much as we can, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is, don't burn your bridges. Make sure that you explore other options with those parties that may not have aligned with all of our goals, and see if you can at least keep them engaged and interested. I'm also recommending, though, that at some point you have to keep them in somewhat stasis as you turn and you focus on getting down the path with one of the parties. At some point, we're going to have to focus our efforts on one.
that's said for sure, but
Yeah.
I can tell you though, the team that we had before, the conditions we were in before, when we were talking to Overlake, were very different than where we are now. And I was there for a lot of that dialogue. And we had some huffing and puffing going on, and we had people that thought we had more to offer when we really didn't. And now we have much more to offer.
The community has grown tremendously since you.
True.
And I think keep in mind the players is changing.
and
We
remem-
have now Tom and Steve. that,
And remember, we had not spent one day yet operating this hospital
That's right.
when those conversations were happening. So,
This hospital was
so
at
when you think about what their perspective was, there was so much untested unknown about running this hospital. And to your point, now we go in with a different profile.
We go in with a different profile, we go in with a different leadership team, we're going in differently than we were before.
That's right, different.
We are a different entity, and I think they are too. Their board's surely changed because they're appointed, they're asked to be on, so there's changes for them. And they've grown a lot since we were there last.
And they
So-
continue to.
Yeah.
The cranes are up on their campus again.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for your idea. That is very helpful.
So are there any other questions? Are we done with this discussion before we move on? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. We appreciate that update. And I-
Val, do you have that last page? That last slide wasn't in your packets because I wanted to take you column by column, but Val has that last page for you.
One more page? One more page? One more thing. What's that last page that we looked at?
Oh. Yeah, I filled it.
Oh, okay.
I filled mine.
Oh,
That's
that
okay.
I'm
That's
sorry, I
fine.
should
Thank
have
you.
said.
It's in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah,
yeah,
right
we
there.
did the same thing. Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is other. I don't know if we have any other. Is there any other that needs to be addressed? Not hearing any, we're going to move on to public comment. Do we have, Scott, you're up.
Well, in a previous life of mine, one of my mentors said, never hand out your presentation to the board or, to the people that you're giving it to, because they'll be spending all of the time looking ahead. So I endorse your withholding your last page of your presentation, Tom. I'm really pleased that the Verdant model is on the table. I think that that's a great way of going. Congratulations. I might suggest that you consider inviting some people who are very knowledgeable about the Verdant model, maybe for 2 meetings. One of them would be more so for your edification, so that you'll have a stronger idea and maybe even be more inspired to go down that particular route. And then later on, a more public meeting that would involve all of the members of the community, informing them about the Verdant model, the potential that might have here in the valley. I'd also want to encourage you to start now to involve the community. It might be very quietly establishing who the 10 or 15 or 18 people in the valley, who are the leaders, the movers, the shakers, those who really should be up to speed and support the Verdant model when it's time to really go public. You might even invite them to the first of the 2 Verdant meetings if you choose to have something like that. And then finally, I just really encourage you to negotiate to make the hospital district as strong and as financially viable. And by the hospital district, I mean not the administration of the hospital and the clinic, but the public health component that will have a continuing life after whomever you decide will take over administration of the hospital and clinics. So that would be, I think you can more or less assume that the operations will be this. It's how big the other component is, how big of that slice of the pie that will really make an impact on the community by the district for days and months and years and generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public? That's it? Okay. Moving right along, upcoming board meetings, regular business meeting will be Thursday, August 9th, 6:30 p.m., Snoqualmie Valley Hospital. Work study, our next work study will be Wednesday, August 22nd, 2018, 6 p.m., Snoqualmie Valley Hospital. And there's no meeting.
I just wanted to let people.
This is a typo. Yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
figured.
because we just did.
Yeah, it's a typo.
Okay, so we got that off. So everybody cross off no meeting in June.
And I just want to let people know our finance meeting isn't until the 8th.
Oh, that's
Of
right,
August.
it's been delayed.
Oh,
Thank you.
Steve's out of town, and then I'm actually out of town when he's back. So
So it's just before the board meeting.
Yeah, so it's August.
unfortunately, there was just no way we could get around that. So I just wanted to let people that were worried, if they worry about the finance, not why aren't they getting the finance minutes? That's the reason.
You will be out of town or Steve will be out?
Steve's going to be out of town the week
First, then
before,
David's next.
and then I'm out of town. So we can't have the meeting until the 8th.
Yeah, it's still summer.
So I just don't want anybody panicking.
I will.
Okay, so regular business meeting August 9th, for the hospital at 6:30 here, and then work study. Yeah, work study is Wednesday, August 22nd, 2018, at 6 p.m. here. I already read these. And we're ready to adjourn. Do I have
I move to adjourn.
Second.
any discussion? Hearing none, we vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Adjourn.
Thank
And it's
you.
6:07 p.m.